Now, we've been connecting with experts from around the world as well, as obviously this summit has implications far-reaching as well. So we now connect with Professor Robert Patman from the University of Otago in New Zealand. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Professor.
Oh, good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So as an international expert, we are curious to hear what you think with the two leaders will accomplish during this meeting.
Well, the Americans have spoken a lot in the build-up about completing or accelerating the denuclearization process. But I also noticed shortly before the summit between the two leaders that President Trump has de-emphasized those expectations somewhat, because he has been referring to the fact that he would be satisfied with a continuation of a regime where there was no missile testing or no testing of nuclear weapons by North Korea. And that suggests that the prior focus on denuclearization is in the process of being rowed back a bit.
But the US has continuously insisted complete denuclearization is the precondition for lifting sanctions against North Korea. But if the two countries fail to reach this agreement of complete denuclearization, do you think sanctions will still be imposed, or is there any leeway for partial lifting of the sanctions as part of the negotiations?
Well, as I see it, I think President Trump is signaling that while he wants denuclearization to be on the agenda, and he may want a more specific definition of what denuclearization means and a timetable for achieving it, he seems to be saying that he's not going to press the issue to the point of possibly wrecking the meeting. And it's also widely indicated, there are, I think, signals that the North Koreans and the Americans may be able to agree on a declaration concerning the ending of the war as a step forward, and to continue the dialogue of this whole question of denuclearization. The difficulty for President Trump is that it would seem that the Kim Jong-un regime really has a problem when it comes to denuclearization. The regime derives a lot of its legitimacy from the possession of nuclear weapons, and it might be quite politically dangerous, I think, to Kim Jong-un to enter into any agreement in which envisaged systematic and rapid denuclearization.
But their economic situation means that the North Korean regime is in desperate situation nowadays, does it not?
It does indeed, and that's why on the American side, they may see that as an opportunity to continue the dialogue on denuclearization. And with the possibility of a peace declaration, of course, that would open up the prospect for closer economic ties, replacing the armistice regime, closer economic ties between South Korea and North Korea, which again would keep denuclearization on the table, but it would be much more on a longer-term footing, which means that President Trump could still domestically claim he's on the way to or his administration is on the way of pursuing its objective of denuclearization. At the same time, it would allow Kim Jong-un to also talk in a similar way, but not necessarily in a way that he would believe is politically dangerous to his regime.
And finally, I want to ask you about the setting for this summit. It's in Vietnam, and obviously North Korea, there's been suggestion, will look to Vietnam as a model for their potential economic successes as well in the future. What do you think about that, how they view that?
Possibly there's mixed views there, because President Trump is making much of the fact that Vietnam is serving for the host. Of course, we've seen reconciliation between Vietnam and the United States. Vietnam, of course, is a one-party communist state, but it has undergone substantial economic reforms. And I think the Americans are signaling to Kim Jong-un, this is the economic success that North Vietnam is currently enjoying. I understand its economy grew about 7% in the last year, and that follows very strong year-in, year-out performances by the Vietnamese economy. But there's several problems from Kim Jong-un's point of view. Firstly, I think he doesn't yet want to get rid of nuclear weapons at the speed which the Americans want. And secondly, would he really be keen on the sort of economic reforms which Vietnam has embarked upon? Vietnam embarked upon economic reforms 3 decades ago, and has really opened its economy up to the world. And again, one of the concerns for the authoritarian regime in Pyongyang is whether there could be political dangers in opening up to the global economy in that way for the regime in Pyongyang.
Professor Patman, thank you for your time today. And that was Professor Robert Patman from the University of Otago. And thank you for joining us all the way from New Zealand.
Thank you.